Candlelight Rescue. The rain fell in sheets across downtown Portland, turning the evening streets into glistening rivers under the yellow glow of streetlights. Olivia Turner pulled her raincoat tighter as she hurried toward the bus stop, her 12-hour shift at Providence Medical Center finally over. Her sneakers splashed through puddles, her mind already halfway to her small apartment where a cup of tea and her cat Perseus waited. That's when she spotted the crumpled figure on the sidewalk ahead. A man in a dark suit lay motionless beside a closed coffee shop, rain soaking through his clothes. Several pedestrians hurried past, heads down against the downpour, apparently mistaking him for a homeless person sleeping rough. "Sir, are you okay?" Olivia called out, approaching cautiously. When he didn't respond, her nursing instincts took over. She knelt beside him, heedless of the water seeping through her scrubs, and checked his pulse, rapid but present. His breathing was shallow, his skin clammy to the touch. "Can you hear me?" she asked, gently turning his face toward her. He was in his 40s with salt and pepper hair and fine features, now pale and drawn. No smell of alcohol, no obvious injuries. When his eyelids fluttered without opening, Olivia pulled out her phone and dialed 911. "I need an ambulance at 4th and Morrison," she reported, giving the dispatcher a quick assessment of his symptoms. Possible cardiac event or diabetic emergency. While waiting, she improvised, using her umbrella to shield him from the rain and placing her folded scarf under his head. The man's expensive watch glinted in the streetlight, a detail that registered briefly before she focused on monitoring his vitals. "Hang in there," she murmured, holding his hand partly for comfort, partly to keep track of his pulse. "Help is coming." "I'm Olivia, I'm a nurse. You're going to be okay." A faint squeeze of her fingers was his only response. When the ambulance arrived, Olivia provided the paramedics with her observations. "I'm coming with you," she said, climbing in beside them. It wasn't protocol for strangers, but her medical credentials and firm tone brooked no argument. At the emergency room, ironically the same one she'd left an hour earlier, Olivia stayed. While doctors diagnosed severe hypoglycemia complicated by exhaustion, she waited until he was stable before slipping away, leaving only her first name with the night nurse. "Just a fellow human being," she said when the nurse called her actions heroic. Anyone would have done the same. At home, Olivia finally peeled off her damp clothes and wrapped herself in a warm robe. Perseus wound around her ankles as she heated water for tea. The face of the unconscious stranger floated in her mind briefly before exhaustion claimed her. She never expected to see him again. She certainly never imagined he was Nathaniel Reed, the reclusive founder of Helix Innovations, whose revolutionary medical technology was changing healthcare across the country, including at her own hospital. By morning, the incident felt like a strange dream as she prepared for another shift. Just another rainy night in Portland, just another person in need. She had no way of knowing that across town, in a penthouse suite overlooking the city, Nathaniel Reed was waking up determined to find the woman who had saved his life. Recognition and gratitude. 3 days after the rainy night rescue, Olivia was halfway through her shift at Providence Medical Center when whispers spread through the nursing station. The hospital administrator was giving an impromptu tour to someone important, very important, judging by the entourage of suits and security personnel trailing behind them. "That's Nathaniel Reed," whispered Jasmine, another nurse, her eyes wide. "The Helix Innovations guy. They say he's worth billions." Olivia nodded absently, more focused on updating her patient charts than celebrity sightings. Helix had developed groundbreaking portable diagnostic tools that had revolutionized emergency medicine. Their equipment was coveted by every hospital in the country, including Providence, which had been trying to secure more units for months. "Why is he here?" Olivia asked, glancing up briefly. "Rumor is he's making a major donation," Jasmine replied. "Something about personal experience with our emergency services." The words triggered a memory of the man in the rain, but Olivia dismissed the thought. Coincidences that dramatic didn't happen in real life until they rounded the corner and locked eyes. "That's her," she heard him say, his deep voice carrying across the nurse's station. The administrator followed his gaze, confusion evident on her face as Nathaniel broke away from the group and approached Olivia. Olivia, he said. Not a question, but a confirmation. The nurse with the umbrella. Recognition dawned instantly. The pale, unconscious stranger was now standing before her, tall, composed, and undeniably the same man whose hand she had held in the ambulance. The sickly pallor had been replaced by healthy color, his previously disheveled appearance now impeccable in a tailored charcoal suit. "Mr. Reed," she said, maintaining her professional demeanor despite her surprise. "I'm glad to see you're feeling better." "Because of you," he replied, his intensity catching her off guard. "You stopped when no one else did. The doctor said if you hadn't acted so quickly—" He left the sentence unfinished. The administrator hovered nearby, clearly curious about their connection. Olivia felt the weight of stares from colleagues who'd never seen her flustered before. "Anyone would have done the same," she said, echoing her words from that night. "But they didn't," Nathaniel countered. "You did." He gestured to the administrator. "I've been explaining to Dr. Warren why I've decided to fund the new emergency wing. Providence has an exceptional staff. You're the evidence." Whispers erupted around them as the implications sank in. Helix Innovations wasn't just donating equipment. Nathaniel Reed was personally funding an entire wing, a project the hospital had been seeking support for years. "That's very generous," Olivia managed, uncomfortable with the attention. "I'd like you to be involved in the planning," Nathaniel continued, seemingly oblivious to her discomfort. "You understand what emergency responders need better than most architects or administrators." Before she could formulate a response, the chief of medicine joined their group, engaging Nathaniel in conversation about the donation details. Olivia used the opportunity to step back, retreating to the medication room where Jasmine immediately cornered her. "You saved Nathaniel Reed's life and didn't tell anyone?" she demanded incredulously. "I didn't know who he was," Olivia said, sorting medications with practiced efficiency. "He was just a person who needed help." "That just a person is about to transform this hospital," Jasmine pointed out. "And he specifically asked for you by name." Later, as her shift ended, Olivia found a business card waiting at the nurse's station with a handwritten note. "The project planning meeting is Tuesday at 2. Your insights would be invaluable. N.R." Standing in the same spot where she'd stood 3 days ago, preparing to walk home in the rain, Olivia considered how quickly life could change. She slipped the card into her pocket, uncertain what to make of Nathaniel Reed's attention, but feeling a strange sense that something significant had been set in motion, something that would extend far beyond a chance encounter on a rainy Portland night. Worlds apart. The conference room on the top floor of Reed Tower offered a panoramic view of Portland that made Olivia feel as though she were floating above the city. For the past 6 weeks, she'd been attending weekly planning meetings for the new emergency wing, offering insights on workflow efficiency and patient care that the architects and administrators often overlooked. "What do you think about the triage layout?" Nathaniel asked, appearing beside her as the meeting disbanded. He'd taken to seeking her opinion after the formal discussions ended, valuing her practical perspective. "It's better," Olivia admitted, studying the blueprints. "But the supply closets are still too far from the trauma rooms. In a critical situation, those extra steps matter." Nathaniel nodded, making a note on his tablet. "I'll have them revise it again." His attentiveness to her suggestions had initially surprised her, but she'd come to realize he approached every project with the same meticulous care that had built his empire. What surprised her more was how normal he seemed despite his extraordinary circumstances. Thoughtful, occasionally funny, and genuinely passionate about improving emergency care. "Would you have dinner with me tonight?" he asked suddenly, catching her off guard. "To discuss the project, of course," he added quickly, though something in his eyes suggested more. The invitation sent a ripple of anxiety through her. Their professional relationship had been comfortable, safe. This felt like crossing a boundary. "I'm not sure that would be appropriate," she replied carefully. "Because of the donation?" Nathaniel raised an eyebrow. "You're a consultant on this project, Olivia. There's nothing inappropriate about discussing it over dinner instead of in a sterile conference room." Despite her reservations, Olivia found herself agreeing. I should warn you, I'm not dressed for anywhere fancy, she said, gesturing to her simple blouse and slacks, a step up from scrubs, but far from high fashion. I know a place that won't mind, he promised. The place turned out to be a hole-in-the-wall Vietnamese restaurant in a neighborhood Olivia knew well. The elderly owner greeted Nathaniel by name, seemingly unfazed by the presence of a billionaire in his modest establishment. You come here often? Olivia asked, surprised, as they settled into a corner booth. Best pho in the city, Nathaniel replied. I discovered it during my less fortunate years. Not everything in my life has been boardrooms and luxury, over steaming bowls of soup. He told her about his beginnings, working 3 jobs to put himself through engineering school, sleeping in his car for a semester when he couldn't make rent, developing the first Helix prototype in a garage he shared with 4 other struggling entrepreneurs. Success came later, he explained, and faster than I expected. Sometimes I feel like I'm living someone else's life. The confession humanized him in a way their professional interactions hadn't. Olivia found herself sharing stories of her own struggles, putting herself through nursing school while caring for her ailing grandmother. The emotional toll of emergency medicine, her love for the work despite its challenges. As they walked back to where his driver waited, the evening air crisp with early autumn, Olivia felt a dangerous ease between them. For a few hours, she'd forgotten the vast differences in their circumstances. Reality returned when a photographer stepped from the shadows, camera flashing. Nathaniel instinctively stepped in front of her, his security detail immediately moving to intervene. Mr. Reed, is this your new girlfriend? The photographer called out before being escorted away. Nathaniel turned to her, apology written across his features. I'm sorry. That comes with the territory, unfortunately. It's fine, she said, though it wasn't. The incident was a stark reminder of the scrutiny that surrounded his life, a life she wasn't part of and couldn't imagine navigating. The next morning, a gossip site featured a blurry photo of them leaving the restaurant. Tech billionaire's mystery woman, read the caption. By lunchtime, her phone was buzzing with texts from co-workers. Olivia stared at the image, feeling the careful boundaries she'd constructed between their worlds crumbling. Whatever was developing between them, friendship, attraction, or something undefined, existed in a spotlight she never asked for. As she prepared for her shift, Olivia wondered if some distances were simply too vast to bridge, regardless of good intentions or unexpected connections. In the hospital corridors, where she had always felt most confident, Olivia now sensed curious glances following her. She had saved a man's life, never expecting recognition. Now she found herself recognized for something entirely different, something that made her question whether she belonged in Nathaniel Reed's world at all. Unexpected crisis, Olivia was midway through her night shift when the emergency room televisions flickered with breaking news. The scrolling headline made her stomach drop. Helix Innovations under federal investigation, CEO Nathaniel Reed, accused of data privacy violations. Her colleagues gathered around the screens as the reporter detailed allegations that Helix's diagnostic devices had been collecting patient data without proper consent, potentially violating healthcare privacy laws. The company's stock had plummeted and there were calls for Nathaniel's resignation. Isn't that your boyfriend's company? Asked Dr. Wilcox, a surgeon known for his lack of tact. He's not my boyfriend, Olivia replied automatically, though they'd shared several more dinners over the past month, each one making it harder to deny the growing connection between them. Well, whoever he is, looks like Providence might want to reconsider taking his money, Wilcox continued. Hospital can't afford to be associated with a privacy scandal. By morning, the hospital administration had called an emergency meeting. The new wing project was officially on hold pending further investigation. Outside, protesters had already gathered, their signs condemning both Helix and Providence for the partnership. Olivia hadn't heard from Nathaniel since the news broke. She found herself checking her phone repeatedly, unsure if she wanted him to call or was relieved he hadn't. When her shift ended, she slipped out through a side entrance to avoid the reporters who had begun camping outside the main doors. Her apartment offered little refuge. Every news channel featured analysts dissecting Helix's alleged violations, many speculating that Nathaniel had knowingly designed the devices to harvest valuable medical data for sale to pharmaceutical companies. When her doorbell rang that evening, Olivia wasn't entirely surprised to find Nathaniel standing in the hallway. What shocked her was his appearance. Unshaven, exhausted, the confident tech mogul replaced by a man who looked as though he hadn't slept in days. "I shouldn't have come," he said immediately, turning to leave. "Wait!" Olivia held the door open wider. "Come in." Inside her modest apartment, Nathaniel seemed out of place. Too tall, too polished even in his current disheveled state for her cozy but cramped living space. Her cat Perseus regarded the visitor with suspicious yellow eyes from atop the bookshelf. "The allegations are false," Nathaniel said without preamble, pacing the small area between her couch and coffee table. "Yes, the devices collect anonymized data for quality improvement, but there's explicit consent built into the setup process. Someone manipulated code in our latest update to bypass those protections." "Who would do that?" Olivia asked, settling onto her couch. "My chief technology officer, apparently." Nathaniel's voice was bitter. "Franklin stood to make millions selling datasets to research firms. When our security team flagged unusual data transfers, he planted evidence suggesting I had authorized it." Olivia studied him, searching for any hint of deception. She had seen enough patients lie about their symptoms to develop a sixth sense for dishonesty. "You had no idea?" "None," Nathaniel said firmly, meeting her gaze. "Patient privacy was my non-negotiable from day one. My mother died because doctors in different hospitals couldn't access her records quickly enough. I wanted to solve that problem, not create new ones." The raw pain in his voice convinced her more than his words. She had seen that same anguish in families who lost loved ones to preventable miscommunications. "What happens now?" she asked. "My legal team is building a case against Franklin, but the damage to Helix's reputation—" He trailed off. "The emergency wing funding is secure in a separate foundation, but I understand if Providence wants to distance themselves from me." "The hospital might," Olivia said carefully, "but I don't." Nathaniel looked up, surprise evident. "Most people are running as fast as they can in the opposite direction." "I'm not most people," she replied simply. "I didn't help you that night because of who you were, and I'm not abandoning you now because of who people think you are." Something shifted between them in that moment, a barrier dissolving. When Nathaniel reached for her hand across the coffee table, Olivia didn't pull away. The following days brought more challenges. Hospital administrators questioned Olivia's continued association with Nathaniel. Colleagues warned her about hitching her reputation to a sinking ship. But as evidence of Franklin's betrayal emerged, vindicating Nathaniel's claims, Olivia stood firm. Their worlds remained drastically different. His filled with legal battles and corporate maneuvering, hers with the immediate needs of patients and the rhythms of hospital life. Yet in the crucible of crisis, they discovered a shared resilience that transcended these differences, forging something neither had expected to find. Bridging two worlds. 6 months after the scandal broke, Olivia stood at the ribbon-cutting ceremony for the newly completed Providence Emergency Care Center. Sunlight streamed through the glass atrium, illuminating the gathered crowd of hospital staff, city officials, and media. Nathaniel delivered his speech with characteristic precision, crediting the design to the healthcare professionals who had contributed their expertise. His gaze found Olivia's in the audience when he described how a single act of kindness had inspired the project. The controversy surrounding Helix had faded after Franklin's confession and subsequent arrest, but the experience had transformed both the company and its founder. "Healing happens through connection," Nathaniel concluded. "Between doctors and patients, between technology and humanity, between strangers who become something more." After the ceremony, they slipped away from the reception. Finding a quiet moment in one of the consultation rooms Olivia had insisted be included in the design, spaces where families could receive news in privacy and dignity. "So," Nathaniel said, leaning against the doorframe, "how does it feel to see your ideas become reality?" Olivia ran her hand along the wall, remembering the blueprints they had revised countless times. "Surreal. I keep thinking about how differently things could have turned out." The journey to this moment had been neither simple nor smooth. The investigation had eventually cleared Nathaniel, but rebuilding public trust in Helix required fundamental changes. He had restructured the company with a patient advocacy board having oversight on all data practices, and personally donated to privacy rights organizations. "I have something to show you," Nathaniel said, leading her through a corridor to a room near the center of the emergency department. A plaque beside the door read, "Turner Diagnostic Suite." "You named it after me?" Olivia asked, surprised and slightly embarrassed. "After your grandmother," he corrected. "You said she taught you that compassion was as important as medicine. This room contains the most advanced diagnostic equipment we've developed, and the strictest privacy protocols." The gesture touched her deeply. Throughout their relationship, Nathaniel had listened to her stories, remembering details she mentioned only in passing. Their relationship had evolved gradually, navigating the complexities of their different worlds. Olivia continued working shifts at the hospital, maintaining her independence despite Nathaniel's resources. He had adapted too, finding value in her simpler approach to life, often trading his penthouse for evenings in her apartment, where Perseus had grudgingly accepted his presence. "I've been thinking," Nathaniel said as they explored the completed wing. "About what's next. For Helix?" Olivia asked. The company had recovered remarkably under his reformed leadership. "For us," he clarified, "I'm opening a Helix Research Center in Boston. They're doing groundbreaking work in emergency medicine protocols at Massachusetts General." Olivia felt a familiar tension, the pull between their separate lives and their shared connection. "That's a big opportunity for you." "For both of us," Nathaniel said. "MGH has an exceptional nursing program. You've talked about wanting to teach someday, share what you've learned." She hesitated, the prospect both exciting and daunting. "I've built my life here." "I know," he said. "I'm not asking you to give up your career or independence. I'm suggesting we find a way to build something together without either of us losing ourselves in the process." That had been their continuous challenge, finding balance between his world of influence and innovation and her world of practical care and direct impact. Neither complete immersion nor rigid separation had worked. The answer lay somewhere in between. "A fresh start might be good," she admitted. "Somewhere we're not the billionaire and the nurse who saved him." Nathaniel smiled. "Though that's still my favorite story about us." As they rejoined the reception, Olivia observed the diverse groups mingling, administrators in suits, nurses still in scrubs, community members whose lives would be changed by the new facility. In that moment, she saw a reflection of what she and Nathaniel had been building, a bridge between different worlds that served something greater than either alone could accomplish. Later that evening, as they walked along the Willamette River, the city lights reflecting on the water, Olivia reached for Nathaniel's hand. "Boston sounds interesting," she said, "but wherever we go, I'm keeping my cat and my job title." "I wouldn't have it any other way," he replied. "Your independence is part of what makes you, the unlikely path that had brought them together. From a rainy sidewalk rescue to a partnership neither had imagined possible, reminded Olivia that the most meaningful connections often emerge where we least expect them. Their differences remained, but they had learned to build around them rather than despite them, creating something neither would have found alone. As they discussed their potential future on the East Coast, Olivia realized that the true emergency care had happened that rainy night not just for Nathaniel, but for both of them, a rescue from lives that, though successful in different ways, had been missing the connection they'd found in each other.